pregnant stepmom went from loving me to suddenly hating me. Then my dad said I must be doing something wrong because no one hates a kid for no reason. So I decided to run away. Honestly, I'm at my wits' end, and I need to speak out. I don't even know where to start. I ran away from home last week. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I just want to put it all out there. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar and realized this. Or maybe someone older will read this and finally believe their child when they say something is wrong at home. Let me rewind a bit. Growing up, it was just me and my dad for a long time. My mom died when I was a toddler, so I don't remember her much. Dad did his best. He's not perfect, he works a lot, talks too little, but he tried. We weren't super close, but he was solid, dependable. Then, about a year ago, he met her. Michelle. That's the woman he married 6 months ago. My stepmother, though calling her that feels like swallowing nails. First, she was sweet. Too sweet. You know that fake cheerfulness that smells like disinfectant? Everything she did was for show, especially when Dad was watching. Oh, sweetie, I baked your favorite cookies. Of course, I want to come to your band recital. But the moment we were alone, her smile would go brittle and she'd suddenly remember something urgent she had to do elsewhere. Still, she never said anything mean. Not directly. Not until she got pregnant. That's when it changed. Like, overnight. One morning, she passed me in the kitchen and didn't even say good morning. That afternoon, she accidentally donated my hoodie, my mom's hoodie, to Goodwill. When I asked her why, she gave me this look, like I just crawled out of the trash can, and said, "Oh, I didn't know it mattered." It looked old. Then came the lies. She told my dad I refused to do chores. Lie. She said I was rude to her friends. Weird, since I wasn't even there. She claimed I left trash in the living room after she'd just cleaned. That one got me grounded for 3 days. Every time, she'd twist something tiny into a whole narrative where I was the problem child. And my dad? He believed her. Every single time. She's pregnant, he'd say. She's hormonal. Be patient. But patience only works when the other person's playing fair. Michelle was on a mission to erase me from my own home. I tried to talk to Dad. I told him she hated me. He didn't even pause. Just said, "People don't hate kids for no reason. You must have done something." That sentence? It broke something in me. That night I packed a bag. Just clothes, a bit of cash I'd saved, and a photo of my real mom. I climbed out my window like some cliché movie character and started walking. No real plan, just a deep instinct that I had to get away. But here's the thing. As much as that moment hurt, it wasn't the start of the story. The real start? It was 3 weeks before, when I heard Michelle on the phone. She was in the laundry room, door cracked open. I wasn't eavesdropping, I was gonna throw in some towels. But what I heard stopped me cold. She was saying, "Don't worry, he won't be a problem much longer." At first, I thought she meant my dad. Then she laughed and said, "He still thinks I'm trying. Poor guy. Once the baby's here, it'll all be mine anyway." That's when I started noticing other things. Her weird internet searches. Her constant texting. The locked drawers. The private phone calls at night. And then I found the box. But I'll get to that next. So yeah, after that phone call in the laundry room, he won't be a problem much longer. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed it over and over in my head like a broken record. And I started watching her more closely. The smiles that died the second my dad turned away. The way she touched her stomach when she thought no one was looking. Not like she was feeling love, but power. 2 days after that, I came home early from school. A substitute showed up third period, and I faked being sick. I told the nurse I had stomach cramps and called it a day. When I walked in the front door, the house was quiet. Michelle's car was still in the driveway, though, which meant she was home. I was about to head upstairs when I heard her talking on the phone again. Same tone, low and smug. "I'm not worried about the kid," she said. "He's weak. He doesn't matter. Once the baby's here, I'll make sure everything's in my name." That hit me like a punch to the chest. I didn't fully understand what she meant, but it sounded like a plan. And I wasn't part of it. I didn't make a sound. Just crept upstairs, heart pounding. Her voice kept floating up the staircase like poison, each word burning a little deeper. That's when I remembered the box. She had this blue box with gold trim in her closet. I'd seen her lock it one day when she didn't realize I was behind her. It wasn't a jewelry box. It was too plain, too utilitarian. The kind of thing someone keeps secrets in, not earrings. I waited until later that night. She went to bed early, pregnancy exhaustion or whatever, and Dad was still at work. I crept into their room with a screwdriver from the garage. Felt wrong, but not as wrong as everything she was doing. I pried the box open. The lock was cheap, clicked open with a pop. Inside, I swear my blood went cold. There were printed messages, texts, emails, even photos. Most of them were between her and some guy named T. I didn't recognize the name. The messages were disgusting. Not just flirty, explicit. The kind of stuff you don't say unless you're deep in it. And then, God, I found one that made my stomach turn. Once the baby comes, I'll get him out. You'll move in and we'll start fresh. He's not your problem. He's not anyone's. They were talking about me, like I was trash to be taken out. One email from Michelle to T said, I've already convinced him the kid's the issue. He's too guilt-ridden to see what's really happening. He'll take my side if I push hard enough. I sat there, reading those messages under the dim glow of a desk lamp, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. This wasn't just, I don't like my stepson. This was calculated. She was playing chess and I was a pawn she was trying to remove. Then I found a printed form, a draft of a guardianship paper. She had written my dad's name and hers, without telling him, and listed me as a dependent with disciplinary needs. There were more pages. Medical notes, completely fabricated. She had scheduled a consultation with a child psychiatrist and written things like, displays manipulative behavior, and exaggerates abuse for attention. I didn't even know what to do. I sat in the dark, the box open in front of me, and felt something snap, not like a break, more like a shift. The kid I was an hour ago, he was gone, replaced by someone who suddenly understood just how dangerous a smile could be. I relocked the box, returned it exactly as it was, and walked back to my room like I was made of glass. I didn't cry. Not yet. The next morning, Michelle was back to her sweet, sing-song voice. She made French toast, called me honey, gave me a kiss on the head. I almost threw up. I knew then that I couldn't stay. I had to run. But not yet. Not until I figured out what she was really planning, and how I could blow it all wide open. Alright, so by this point I knew what she was. Not just a liar. Not just a woman who suddenly hated her stepson, but someone who was actively laying groundwork to destroy me. Gaslighting, faking documents, scheming with someone on the side. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was war. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. Not right away. Not my dad, not my school counselor, not even my friend Will, the only person I ever really trusted. I needed to stay quiet, observant, smart. She was already building a case against me, so any emotional outburst would just play into her hands. I had to be surgical. The next few days, I pretended like nothing happened. I did my chores, came home on time, stayed out of her way. She started easing up, thinking she had broken me down enough to drop her guard. It was all part of her act. The caring pregnant wife who just wants what's best for our family. Then she made a mistake. A big one. My dad got home early one Friday, something he never does. He walked in while Michelle was on the phone in the backyard, pacing with her hand on her hip. I was upstairs, listening through the open bathroom window. She didn't hear him walk in through the front. But I did. And that's when I heard her say, clear as day, no, he doesn't suspect a thing. He thinks the kid's just moody. I've already told him we need to rethink the living situation before the baby comes. Then she laughed. That low, satisfied, I've already won, kind of laugh. She kept talking about how he'd do whatever she said, because he was so desperate to hold the family together. About how she was going to take control of the finances soon. How stepkids don't have real rights anyway. I looked down from the window just in time to see my dad standing on the patio. Frozen. Face pale. Eyes wide. He had heard it. Every word. Michelle turned and saw him, and the color drained from her face. She hung up so fast it was like the phone burned her hand. "Oh, honey, I was just—" But he didn't say a thing. He walked back inside, past her, without a single word, straight to the bedroom. I heard the door shut. I waited. 5 minutes later, she came stomping up the stairs, red-faced and seething. I braced for a scream, but what I got was worse. Calm. Too calm. "You've been turning him against me," she said. "You've been manipulating him. Don't think I don't see what you're doing." My hands clenched. "I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. You've always been in the way. But you won't be for much longer." I stood there, silent. She smiled, tight, controlled, and then whispered, "Enjoy your room while it's still yours." Then she turned and walked away. I knew I had to act fast. That night, after they both went to bed, I snuck into the living room and grabbed my dad's old iPad, the one he never used anymore. I turned off location services, disabled auto updates, and set it up as a hidden camera. I placed it behind the row of books on the living room shelf, facing the couch. Over the next 2 days, I recorded everything. Her phone calls, her rants, the way she talked to her friends about me when Dad wasn't around. I captured her mocking my dad to her sister, saying things like, "He's so easy to manipulate. He still thinks I married him for love." I emailed the videos to myself from a hidden address and backed them up on a flash drive I taped inside the cover of a school binder. By Monday night, I had enough to make her choke on her own words. But there was one more thing I needed. Something that would make everything impossible to deny. So I waited until the next time she left her purse on the kitchen counter. I took her phone not to go through it, just long enough to forward her latest call log to my dad's email. She'd been speaking with T almost every night. I didn't know who T was yet, but I was about to find out. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for gravity to do its job. I didn't sleep much that week. Not because I was scared, no, that part had faded. What kept me up at night was the anger. The white-hot kind that doesn't make you scream or cry, but instead makes you cold, focused. A clarity I'd never felt before settled over me like armor. By Thursday evening, I had everything. Video proof, the call logs, copies of her emails, and a plan. That night my dad was home. Michelle was working late, or at least that's what she said. But her car wasn't in the office parking lot. Either sheka. She was somewhere else. Maybe with T, maybe preparing for whatever restructuring she thought she could pull. I sat at the kitchen table while Dad poured himself a glass of scotch. He looked exhausted, more gray in his hair than I remembered. I waited until he took the first sip. Then I slid the flash drive across the table. "What's this?" he asked. I kept my voice even. "Proof that she's been lying to both of us." He stared at it, unmoving. "I know you don't want to hear this," I said. "But you have to. Just watch the videos. Listen to her calls. Then decide if I'm still moody, or if maybe I was just the only one paying attention." He didn't respond, just stood and walked into the office, closing the door behind him. What followed was the longest 40 minutes of my life. When he finally came out, his face looked hollow, like he'd aged 10 years in that one room. He didn't say anything at first, just walked over to the sink, poured out his scotch and rinsed the glass. Then he looked at me, and he said something I never thought I'd hear. "I'm sorry, son. I should have listened." My throat went tight. He sat down across from me and exhaled slow, like trying to keep himself from breaking. I saw her for who she was that day in the backyard, but I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe it was just frustration, hormones. But this is something else. I nodded. "She's dangerous, Dad. Not physically, but she's smart. She's playing you, playing all of us." He rubbed his hands down his face. "T, this man she's talking to, any idea who he is?" I pulled out the printed call log and pointed to one number. It's saved in her phone under just the letter T, but I cross-checked it. It belongs to Todd Landers. He's her ex-old boyfriend from before you. That's when Dad broke. He stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled. She's planning a life with someone else, he whispered, and using me to build it. He paced the room like a caged animal, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might snap. Finally, he stopped. We do this my way, he said.
No yelling.
No violence. Just the truth. And her lies, dragged into the light. I nodded. He looked at me. You recorded all that? Everything. He placed a hand on my shoulder, awkward but firm. Then tomorrow night, he said. We end this. Friday night came fast. Too fast. Like a bullet you hear whistling just before it hits. My dad left work early and came home before Michelle. I stayed in my room, headphones on but no music playing, listening for the moment. I couldn't sit still. Every breath felt like holding a match too close to gasoline. At 7:13 p.m., I heard the front door. She walked in humming, all light and breezy. I heard her set her purse down, her keys on the counter, the fridge open, crack, then the fizz of soda. Casual. As if nothing she did could ever burn the walls down. Then my dad spoke. Hey, Michelle. We need to talk. His voice didn't carry anger. Carried finality. A tone I hadn't heard from him since I was little. The kind of tone that stops arguments before they start. I crept downstairs and hovered just out of sight. She laughed. What's wrong now? Did the kid forget to do his chores again? He didn't answer right away. I imagined him just looking at her. That dead stare he gave when his patience had fully drained. I know about Todd, he said. I know you've been planning to push my son out. I know about the guardianship forms, the fake psych consults, the emails, all of it. There was a pause. Then her voice changed, snapped tight. Excuse me? I've seen the messages. I've heard the recordings. You lied to me, lied about my son, lied about everything. The silence that followed was pure weight. I pictured her eyes darting around, trying to figure out what he had, how much, and whether she could still weasel her way out. Then she said the most Michelle thing possible. So he put you up to this. My dad's voice was a growl. He saved us from you. You're siding with him over your pregnant wife? She shouted, all sweetness gone now. He's manipulative. He's unstable. I've told you this.
No.
You told me what you needed me to believe. But I finally opened my eyes. That's when I stepped into the room. She turned and looked at me like I was vermin. You little freak. You've been spying on me? No, I said calmly. I've been protecting myself. Something no one else was willing to do. She took a step forward, venom in her eyes. You think you're clever, don't you? Think you've won something? I didn't flinch. Dad stepped between us. Get your things, he said. You're leaving. She laughed. Actually laughed. You think you can just kick me out? I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child. That means something. Not after this, he said. She stormed down the hall, yelling over her shoulder. You're making a mistake. I'll tell everyone you abused me. That your son's dangerous. That you're mentally unfit. I have everything backed up, I said. Try it. You'll burn yourself faster than you burned us. It was over in 10 minutes. She packed a bag, grabbed her purse, and slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. We watched her taillights vanish down the street in silence. Dad sat down at the kitchen table and buried his face in his hands. I just stood there, numb. No high.
No rush.
Just the heavy quiet after the explosion. He finally looked up and said, I can't believe I let her get that far. I shrugged. You wanted to believe in something good. That's not weak, Dad. That's human. His voice cracked. I almost lost you. I didn't have anything to say to that. Not yet. You'd think once she walked out that door, the storm would be over. It wasn't. Michelle didn't go quietly. Her exit was just the prelude to the real chaos. The kind of war that doesn't need fists or shouting, just rumors and paperwork and whispers in the right ears. Within 3 days, Child Protective Services showed up at our door. I was in the middle of reheating leftovers when the knock came. 2 women in blazers. Calm voices. Clipboard smiles. Mr. Langston, we received a report regarding your son. My dad's hands balled into fists so tight I thought his wedding ring might snap. He invited them in anyway. They sat down, started asking questions. Have there been any recent outbursts? Has your son ever harmed himself or others? Has he expressed thoughts of violence? It was a script. One Michelle had written in her fake notes to that child psychiatrist. They weren't accusing, just doing their job. But I saw it in their eyes. That flicker. That maybe it's true look you get when someone frames the story just right. My dad handed them the flash drive. Said nothing. Just watched them plug it into their tablet and start reading. Watching. Listening. 10 minutes later, one of the women set it down and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Jesus, she muttered. I locked eyes with her. You still think I'm the dangerous one? She shook her head. You're not the story she told us. Not even close. They left an hour later, apologies trailing behind them like a fog. Michelle had filed an official complaint, accusing my dad of emotional neglect and me of violent tendencies. She even submitted fake screenshots of texts I never sent, probably ones she wrote on one of her backup phones. The case was closed in 2 days. She didn't stop. She started calling my dad's job. Left voicemails saying he was mentally unstable, that he had a dangerous son in the house. Then she reached out to some of my teachers at school, trying to get them to confirm patterns of antisocial behavior. None of it worked. We had already given the school counselor the recordings. And one of my teachers, Mr. Dorsey, had been in a similar situation with his stepfather years ago. He shut her down so hard she didn't try twice. Still, it wore us down. Every time the phone rang, I tensed. Every time the doorbell buzzed, I flinched. Dad changed his number, hired a lawyer, filed a restraining order. By the time we went to court, she didn't even show. Just sent her lawyer with a weak attempt to settle. He offered shared guardianship for the sake of the unborn child's stability. My dad laughed. That baby's not even mine anymore. Yeah. You read that right. Because during all this, he ordered a paternity test. She never told him about the other guy. The T in her emails. Todd Landers. And guess what? It was Todd's baby. He found out the week before court. Didn't tell her. Just handed the result to the judge, calm as stone, and said, She's been living a lie. She used my home, my name, and my trust to stage a coup. The judge granted the restraining order. Michelle was officially banned from coming within 100 yards of either of us. The weeks that followed were quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet. The kind of quiet where you finally stop bracing for the next attack. You start rebuilding, slow and uneven, like stitching torn skin. Dad and I weren't suddenly best friends. But we talked more. A little deeper. A little clearer. He started cooking again. Nothing fancy, just his old chili recipe. Pasta with too much garlic, grilled cheese with tomato soup. But it meant something. It was like he was trying to feed us both back to life. One night he came into my room, sat on the edge of the bed and said, You saved me, kid. You saved us. I didn't know what to say. I'd never thought of it that way. But maybe he was right. 2 months of silence. That's how long it lasted. No calls. No emails. No sudden knocks on the door. We started breathing again. Dad went back to work full-time. I was sleeping through the night. For once, the house felt like ours. Then the letter came. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name on the front. Handwritten in soft cursive that made my skin crawl. I knew who it was from before I even opened it. Michelle. I sat on the porch and stared at it for a long time. Thought about throwing it straight into the fire pit. Thought about burning it and letting whatever venom she'd poured inside go up in smoke. But curiosity is a funny thing. Sometimes it wins. So I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Lined notebook paper, torn at the edges. Smelled faintly of perfume. Like she'd spritzed it before sealing the envelope. Every word was perfectly calculated. Dear my name, I know you must hate me. I don't blame you. But please try to understand that things weren't as simple as they seemed. I was overwhelmed, scared, hormonal. I said and did things I regret, and I wish more than anything that I could take them back. But I can't. You were never the problem. I just didn't know how to love you the way you needed. I was afraid you'd never accept me, and I let that fear turn into resentment. But you're smart and brave, and you've always been more perceptive than you let on. I hope one day you'll see that I was human, flawed, yes, but not evil. I was just trying to protect the life I was building. Maybe I went about it the wrong way. But everything I did for our future. Please take care of the baby. He or she will be your sibling, no matter what happens between the adults. I'm leaving the state for a while. I need time to think. Time to figure out who I am. But I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. Love, Michelle. I read it twice. Not because I believed it, but because I wanted to understand how someone could write an entire letter without once saying the word sorry. There was no accountability, no apology for the lies, no acknowledgement of the damage she tried to cause. Just soft deflections and veiled manipulations wrapped in motherly concern. I showed it to my dad. He read it, folded it neatly, and said, "She's still trying to control the story. Don't give her that power." I nodded. "I won't." He put it in the shredder, watched every piece turn to ribbons. We never spoke about it again. But that night I took a long walk. Past the park, past the school, past the edge of the neighborhood. And for the first time in months I felt free. Not just from Michelle, but from the version of myself who always assumed I had to keep the peace, stay small, survive by avoiding the spotlight. Turns out, standing up for yourself is its own kind of healing. Turns out, truth has teeth, and when you finally let it bite, the silence afterward tastes a lot like peace. It's been 6 months. Sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still half expect to hear her heels clicking down the hallway, or her voice dripping sweet poison through the floorboards. But it fades faster now, like a nightmare that knows it's lost its grip. Michelle never came back. No court cases, no custody claims, no attempts to make things right. Just silence, like a skipped stone that finally sank. We moved houses. Dad sold the old place, said he couldn't breathe there anymore. I understood. That house held too many ghosts. We got something smaller, quieter, still close enough for me to stay at my school, but far enough that every corner didn't whisper her name. The new place has light, big windows, clean walls.
No hidden cameras.
No secrets behind locked boxes. It smells like lemon and wood polish and peace. And it's ours. We talk more now. Not every day, not like some cheesy sitcom, but more. He asks how school's going. I ask how work is. Sometimes we just sit in the living room, both reading, not saying a word, but present. It's enough. We're not the perfect father-son duo. We never will be. But he believes me now, and that's all I ever really wanted. As for me, I started writing. Not stories, not journals, just memories. Things I want to remember and things I refuse to forget. Because that's the trick, isn't it? Healing isn't pretending it didn't happen. It's remembering with power instead of pain. I'm also applying to a summer program out of state. Creative arts, photography, a bit of writing. It feels like something from another life to even imagine doing that. But I'm ready. Michelle tried to erase me from my own home. She failed. Because what she didn't count on was that kids grow up. We evolve. We survive. And sometimes we come back sharper, smarter, and strong enough to burn the lies down to ash. So if you're reading this, some other kid sitting in a house that doesn't feel like home, wondering if the problem is you, hear me loud. It's not you. It's never been you. Sometimes adults break themselves and try to blame you for the sound. Don't let them. Collect the truth like kindling. Wait, watch. And when the time comes, strike the match. And walk out of the fire with your head high. I did. And I'm never going back.